Hi, welcome back to Wish as we finish our book, starting on chapter 28. And so, summer drifted by up there in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I was glad when Bible school was over and all I had to do was play cards on Howard's porch or take Wishbone down to the creek. Some days we rode our bikes to nowhere in particular, and once in a while we sold vegetables and bread and butter pickles out of a wagon at the end of our driveway. Mrs. Odom taught me how to crochet and helped me make a scarf for Bertha. Gus took me fishing, and I even won a few Bible bucks in Sunday school. Jackie called every now and then. She had a new boyfriend named Jake who drove a motorcycle. Carol Lee's parents didn't like him, but who cares, she said, not me. Sorry, having a hard time. There we go. She didn't get the bank teller job she wanted, but she met some guy who needed a file clerk at his insurance agency, and then she could finally quit that Waffle House job. I got a few more letters from Scrappy. He didn't say much except, "Sure's been hot here lately," or "I'm getting fat eating jailhouse food, ha ha." I still made my wish every day because I decided I was not ready to give up yet. I wished on a butterfly that landed on me, on a Campbell-shaped cloud, on a cricket in the house, and a lightning bug glowing on my ring finger. I found another four-leaf clover and a penny in a parking lot, and one time we drove across the state line into Tennessee, which is good for wishing if you clap 3 times first. And then one day, a lady from social services showed up at Gus and Bertha's. She snooped around the house, her eyes flittering here and there, examining every little thing. She made a face at the cat hair on the couch and raised her eyebrows at those canning jars in my room. Bertha followed along behind her, chattering a mile a minute about what a big help I am around the house and how much I've loved Vacation Bible School. Of course, she left out the parts about T.J. Rainey and that dumb lunchbox note. "And check out her dog," she said, nodding toward Wishbone snoring by the back door. "You wouldn't believe how she takes care of that dog, feeds him, walks him, lets him sleep right here on her pillow every night." That lady made another face and then asked if there was somewhere we could talk. "Why don't we go on the back porch?" Bertha said. So we sat out on the porch with the afternoon sun high above the mountains while that lady sat in Gus's chair and told us about the situation back at Raleigh, that the situation back in Raleigh had improved. I watched Bertha's face turn white and felt my stomach do a flip. Improved? That lady went on to tell us how my mama was doing better and trying harder and deserved a chance. She explained about how it was always best for children to live with their real parent whenever possible, she added quickly. Then she blabbered on, but all I heard was words like Charlie's well-being and supervision and stable environment. Bertha kept pushing at her hair with a shaky hand and nodding. And then that lady said she would send someone to pick me up in a few weeks, and that was that. Believe me when I tell you my head was spinning. Why was I feeling so scared? I sat there on the porch with confusion swirling around me like a swarm of angry bees. Shouldn't I be feeling happy? Hadn't I want to go back to Raleigh? Didn't I hate these hillbilly kids here in Colby? Didn't I want to get the heck out of this place where my only friend was a up-down boy and I slept on Cinderella pillowcases in a shabby old house hanging off the side of a mountain? And then I had a thought that maybe me jump up and run to the front door where Bertha was watching that lady's car disappear up the driveway What about Wishbone? I hollered. Tell that lady I'm not leaving Wishbone. Bertha swiped at her cheeks and pulled me to her and said the perfect Bertha thing. I will make things right for you, Charlie, she said. I promise. Chapter 29. The next day, Mama called. Bertha talked to her first, soft and low, with her face toward the kitchen wall. I know, Carla, but think of Charlie. Not fair. Finally, she gave the phone to me. Hello? I said, and felt like a baby. Why couldn't I be strong and sassy mouthed like Jackie? Then Mama told me how she can't wait for me to come home, and she's been so lonely, and nobody understands what she's been going through. And Jackie thinks she's so derned grown up that she's not coming back home, and that's fine by me, she said. And after that, she started on Scrappy. What a no good nothing he is, and how he left her high and dry. Doesn't anybody ever think about me? She said. I knew I wasn't really supposed to answer that, so I didn't. Scrappy got a tattoo of a blackbird in a cage on the back of his hand, I said. And guess what happened next? She hung up. Click. Just like that. What happened? Bertha asked. I shrugged. I guess she didn't want to hear about that tattoo. Bertha stood there, slack-jawed, looking from me to the phone and then back at me. Maybe y'all just got disconnected, she said. I bet she'll call back. So we stood there, staring at the phone, while the refrigerator hummed and a cat purred beside us. The phone didn't ring. Bertha shook her head. Nothing ever changes with her, she said. Carla, Carla, Carla. It's always about Carla. Then she grabbed me by the shoulders and said, I'm sorry, Charlie. I shouldn't have said that. It's okay. No, she said, no, it isn't. She's your mama. I wanted to ask Bertha if I really was going to Raleigh, but I was scared to. Hadn't she said she would make things right? But what did that even mean anyway? I decided to walk down to the Odoms, hoping my swirling insides would settle down. I clipped Wishbone's leash to his collar, and we set off down the road. I let him stop every now and then to sniff a tangle of weeds or inspect a tin can on the side of the road. My swirling stomach didn't settle down until the Odom's house came into view. Then, just the sight of it set things right again. That weed-filled yard was littered with balls and tools and shoes. Burl's legs stuck out from under his truck in the driveway. Music from a radio drifted out of Mr. Odom's shop in the garage. Cotton was lining up bricks along the edge of the road, and Lenny was swinging a baseball bat at rocks that hit the road sign with a clang. And then there was Howard working on a crossword puzzle on the steps. By the time I got to the front porch, Mrs. Odom was already out the door, giving Wishbone a piece of cheese. I sat at the steps for a while, not talking, watching Howard working on his puzzle. The thing about Howard was you could be with him and talk, or you could be with him and not talk. He liked you either way. We went inside to play Monopoly, which I personally think is boring, but Howard likes it. Wishbone got mud on the floor, but Mrs. Odom didn't even care. She brought us orange jello and coffee mugs and let Cotton jump on the couch. I kept trying to make myself tell Howard about the squinty-eyed social worker lady and how the situation at home had improved. I wanted to put a smile on my face and take a deep breath and say, guess what? I'm going back to Riley. But I just sat there eating orange jello with Howard and put another hotel on Boardwalk. Jackie called that night and told me she couldn't wait to see me again. She told me her new boyfriend Jake would take me for a ride on his motorcycle, and she could put blue streaks in my hair if I wanted. And I'm finally getting my very own apartment, Charlie, so you can have the bedroom all to yourself, and I don't want to go back to Riley, I said. Silence. I said, I don't want to go back to Riley, I hollered. How come? 'Cause I want to stay here in Colby, but I thought you wanted to come back. Jackie let out a big, heavy sigh, and then she started with, I told you this and I told you that, and what could I do but agree with her? She had told me all that, how I had Gus and Bertha treating me like a princess, and those good-hearted Odoms thanking the good Lord for me at the supper table, how Howard was the nicest friend I could ever want, how I had these beautiful mountains and that little porch under the stars. I just hadn't seen all those things until now. I've been so busy making my wish that I hadn't seen things the way they really were. But Bertha's going to make things right, I told Jackie. What does that mean? She said. I'm not sure. Then she said she'd call again later, and I went to bed with my stomach so tangled up in knots I couldn't sleep. I laid my cheek against Wishbone's warm side and listened to his slow, steady breathing. I couldn't even think about that clothesline of troubles. Shoot, I had so many troubles that line was liable to fall right over. Chapter 30. The next day, Mama called again. I could hear her voice clear across the kitchen while she talked to Bertha, loud and fast. Bertha kept saying, slow down, Carla, and what are you talking about? Then she said, wait, what? Chattanooga? With who? For how long? Bertha kept shaking her head, and her face got redder by the minute. Then she hollered, what about Charlie? You know, your daughter? Bertha almost never got mad about anything more than a cat bringing a mouse inside, so it was a bit of a shock to hear her yelling like that. But then it got worse. She lit into Mama, telling her how she needed to get a hold of herself and act like a mother, how she needed to think about someone besides herself sometime. So you're just gonna waltz up to Chattanooga and come back and be a mother when you're good and ready? Is that it, Carla? And then Bertha was staring at the phone in her hand, and the silence on the other end felt heavy and sad there in that little kitchen. Am I going back to Riley? Popped out my mouth when I wasn't even expecting it to. No, you aren't, Bertha said. Then she told me she had some calls to make and I should go down to Howard's. I told Howard everything, starting with that squinty-eyed social service lady telling us how the situation in Raleigh had improved, and ending with Bertha saying, no, you aren't. And when I was done, he said, ain't Bertha the best? And wasn't that so like Howard, finding the only good part when things are bad? I wondered when he thought about a mama who just waltzes up to Chattanooga, Tennessee, instead of making orange jello in coffee mugs. For a minute, I even wondered if he still wanted to be my friend, knowing my family was all broken up like it was. But the thought flew right out of my mind when he said, let's build a fort. So we spent the afternoon in the Odom's dusty, ramshackle garage searching for stuff to make a fort with: scraps of wood, a work table with no legs, a rusty stop sign riddled with bullet holes. Cotton kept following us around saying, what about this? And holding up something dumb like a broken hamster cage or an empty paint can. Wishbone like to went crazy sniffing around for mice and chipmunks or whatever else might have been in that garage, chewing on bags of birdseed or nesting in a busted radiator. Lenny and Burl helped us drag everything into the woods at the edge of the yard, and then Howard wanted to sit on the porch and draw a plan for the fort. Me, I just dive right in, but not Howard. He was a planner. We worked on the fort for a while, but it was too hot, so we went inside and laid on the living room floor in front of the fan. I stared at the water-stained ceiling and said, I hope I don't have to go back to Raleigh. My voice came out all quivery, and I had to swallow hard to keep the tears from coming. I hoped Howard wouldn't say, I thought you wanted to go back to Riley. He didn't. He said, you're not? How do you know? I just know. He said that so firm and sure that I felt better right away. After a while, Mrs. Odom came in and told me Bertha had called and that I should go home. So I tied Wishbone's leash to Lenny's bike and headed off up the road with my stomach started that familiar swirl again. What if Bertha hadn't been able to make things right for me after all? Chapter 31, the last chapter. When I got back, Gus was home from work, sitting in a lawn chair, dunking turnip greens into a bucket of water. Hey there, Butterbeans, he called out when he saw me. Wishbone slurped up some of that sandy turnip green water, and me and Gus laughed. Bertha's cat, named Lula May, sauntered over and rubbed her head against Wishbone's legs. He gave me a mournful look, but he let her do it. Later, when Bertha put turnip greens and cornbread and tuna casserole on the table, she told me we would talk about everything after supper. I didn't know what talk about everything meant, so I just said okay, but inside I felt scared. I pushed tuna casserole around on my plate and didn't say much while Bertha told us about some friend of hers whose son ran off and joined the army. Honest to goodness, she said, the way she keeps crying and carrying on, you'd think he jumped off a cliff. After supper, I helped her clear the table, and then we went on the porch to eat peaches with vanilla ice cream. I watched the lightning bugs twinkle down below and waited for us to talk about everything. Finally, Bertha started. So, Charlie, she said, I talked to social service today and told them I didn't think your situation at home has improved after all. I told them I thought maybe they'd made a mistake. You did? I did. Then she told me how they'd agreed to check on things. She repeated some of those social services kind of words like reevaluate and stable environment. They promised they would get back to me in a few days, Bertha said. Well, let me tell you, those few days felt like a few years to me. Worry followed me every minute, making my insides flop around and my heart beat like crazy. Howard kept saying, trust me, you're not going back to Riley. But when I asked him how he knew that, he said, I can't tell you, just trust me. I wanted to trust him more than anything, but that ball of worry in my stomach just wouldn't go away. And then, of course, lying in bed with Wishbone snoring beside me, I couldn't stop thinking about how wrong I'd been about everything here in Colby, how I hadn't seen all the good things Jackie saw right away, and that I found myself wanting to be more like Jackie again, and Howard too, both of them always seeing the good in things. I put my head on Wishbone's warm side and made a promise to myself right there in that little room of mine, no matter how things turned out, I was going to try to see the good in things, like Jackie and Howard. I knew I'd probably always have to say pineapple once in a while on account of Scrappy's temper that I have, but who knows? If I tried hard enough, maybe someday somebody might even call me good-hearted. Those few days dragged on. Every little thing I looked at nearly turned me into a crying baby, thinking I might be leaving. Bertha stirring grits by the stove with a cat at her feet. Gus out in the garden in his greasy baseball cap, picking nasty green worms off the tomato plants. Even the shed and the porch and the lawn chairs and the canning jars lined up on the shelf in my room made me sad. I tried to stay busy at Howard's, but then being at the Odoms liked to broke my heart. That ratty old couch on the porch, the yard full of bicycles and balls and dirty sneakers, and of course Howard studying his fort plans like he was building a castle, then heading out to the edge of the yard with that up-down walk of his. Finally, after a few days, the kitchen phone rang while me and Bertha were out on the front porch eating egg salad sandwiches for lunch. She answered it and talked for a while, and when she came back out, the look on her face told me something good was about to happen. "How would you like to stay here with me and Gus, Charlie?" she said. My heart nearly leaped right out of my chest. "Stay?" I said. Bertha nodded. "Stay." "For how long?" Then Bertha said almost the exact same words that Jackie had said on her last night in my room about how Scrappy was going to keep on being Scrappy and Mama was going to keep on being Mama. And then she told me as long as she had a breath in her body, she was going to make things right for me. I wanted to jump up and down and pump my fist and let out a cheer that would echo across the valley below us. I wanted to spread my arms like wings and fly right off the porch and out over the treetops and up into the clouds. I wanted to dance with Wishbone and then race down to Howard's to tell them the news. But what did for but what I did first was hug Bertha. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "I wish I would like to stay with you and Gus." I hugged her one more time and added, "I would like that a lot." Bertha looked at me and teary-eyed and said, "Guess what I'm doing first thing tomorrow?" "What?" "I'm getting every single one of those dang canning jars out of your room." We laughed and I asked if I could go tell Howard the news. So me and Wishbone raced down to the Odoms and up the porch steps. I banged on the screen door, hollering, "Guess what, y'all?" I didn't even wait for anybody to come to the door. I burst right into their living room, which I know was not a very nice thing to do, but I couldn't stop myself. Howard jumped up from the couch and Mrs. Odom came running in from the kitchen and said, "I'm staying here. I'm not going back to Riley." Mrs. Odom hugged me and told me that was the best news ever, but Howard just said, "Told ya." Then he gave Wishbone half a vanilla wafer and said, "I knew you were staying here." "But how'd you know?" I asked. "'Cause that was my other part of my wish," he said. "That day at the creek, I wished that you would be my friend and stay here in Colby." "You did?" He nodded. "Yep. And since the part about being my friend came true, I knew the other part would too. But I couldn't tell you 'cause of that rule. You know, you can't tell your wish to anybody or it won't come true." Well, didn't that just beat all? Howard making a wish like that. On my way home, I thought about how I'd made my wish so many times and it hadn't come true. And there was Howard getting his wish on the very first try. Still, my heart felt light as a feather as I turned up the gravel driveway toward Gus and Bertha's. That night after supper, we sat out on the porch, ate blackberry cobbler, and listened to Bertha's stories. And then she said one time she ran out of gas in the middle of nowhere with three cats in the car. "Remember that, Gus?" He nodded. and said, "Yep." Then Bertha let out a big contented sigh and said, "I never in my wildest dreams would have thought we'd had a family like this. Would you, Gus? A family like this?" Is that what she said? She had said that. A family, a real family, a family that cared about me and called me Butterbean and was going to take the canning jars out of my room first thing tomorrow. A family that wasn't broken. A family that I've been wishing for all those times. I couldn't hardly wait till Sunday when I could find my flower in the garden of blessings and write my family on it. Suddenly Bertha called out, "Star, first star, everybody make a wish." I looked up at the star twinkling over the mountains, but instead of wishing, I just closed my eyes and breathed in the piney air. My wish had finally come true. I hope you enjoyed this book as much as I did, and maybe you could check out some more books by Barbara O'Connor. Here they are: Beethoven in Paradise, Me and Rupert Goody, Moon Pie and Ivy, Fame and Glory in Freedom, Georgia, Taking Care of Mosses, How to Steal a Dog, Greetings from Nowhere, The Small Adventure of Popeye and Elvis, The Fantastic Secret of Owen Jester, On the Road to Mr. Minos. So maybe you can go to the library and check out some more books by Barbara O'Connor. I hope you made a wish and your wish comes true.